Chapter 1. The White Tyranny. Elara's studio was a sanctuary built on a foundation of dust and doubt. Sunlight, thick with motes, slanted across the hardwood floor, illuminating a large, pristine canvas leaning against the far wall. It was a professional-grade canvas, stretched perfectly taut, and its pure, intimidating whiteness had been mocking her for 6 weeks. The idea was to paint the Coastal Vigil, a massive, moody piece depicting the ancient lighthouse near her childhood home. Battered by a twilight storm, she saw the finished painting vividly in her mind. The dark, churning teal of the sea, the single, resolute beam of light, the textured, unforgiving rock. It was a masterpiece, shimmering just beyond the veil of reality. And that was the problem. To start meant to fail. To start meant committing the first, irreversible line that might not match the perfect, magnificent image in her head. It was the fear of diminishing the ideal by the clumsy reality of execution. The perfect painting existed only in the realm of the unbegun. The moment she touched it, it would become merely a painting, flawed and vulnerable to criticism, most harshly her own. Every morning for 6 weeks, the ritual was the same. She'd make coffee, wipe down her brushes, some of the best sable money could buy, and then sit down at her desk to sketch concepts or research light sources. She'd meticulously organize her tubes of oil paint, lining up the viridians and ultramarines, the umbers and siennas, but never breaking the seal on a color that mattered. She protected the canvas from her own hand with a diligence bordering on reverence. Today, however, the fear had curdled into a heavy, aching boredom. Her sketches were redundant, her research exhaustive. She was trapped in the agonizing stasis of preparation. She rose from her desk, the floorboards creaking softly under her weight, and walked over to the canvas. She touched its surface, cool and resistant. It felt like a barrier, a high white wall protecting a treasure she might not deserve. "Ridiculous," she whispered, her voice husky. "It's just linen and gesso." Chapter 2. The Yellow Ruin. Elara picked up her largest flat brush, a 2-inch monster usually reserved for laying down broad swaths of background. Next, she hesitated over the palette, her hand trembling slightly. She knew she should mix the dark, complex underpainting, but the mixing process felt too serious, too demanding of perfection right out of the gate. The weight of the final vision was crushing her. Then, a sudden, wild, and utterly rebellious thought flashed through her mind. Let's just make a mess. It was a distractive, liberating impulse. She grabbed a tube of cadmium yellow, a jarring, electric color that had no place whatsoever in her moody twilight stormscape, and squeezed a generous dollop directly onto the center of the canvas. It landed with a soft, wet sound, looking obscene, a vulgar, glorious splash against the intimidating purity. A tiny, involuntary laugh escaped her. It was a sound of shock and utter, irresponsible release. The perfect canvas was ruined. The pressure vanished in a puff of yellow paint. Taking a deep, liberating breath, Elara dipped her large brush into the bright yellow, and without thinking about form or composition, dragged the paint in a heavy, exuberant diagonal line from the top left corner to the bottom right. The first brushstroke. It wasn't good. It wasn't even related to the lighthouse. It was just a bold, bright mark of pure disobedience. But as the yellow dried, she felt a profound shift. The canvas was no longer an ideal. It was now a workshop. It was no longer staring back at her. It was awaiting her next move. The white tyranny was over. She grabbed a tube of deep ultramarine blue, and with a sudden surge of joyful confidence, began mixing the rich, stormy teal of the ocean on her palette. The yellow line would be covered. Or perhaps it wouldn't, perhaps it would peek through the layers. A secret, energetic foundation. It didn't matter. As she laid down the first, thick layer of the ocean, dark, textured, exactly the right mood, a quiet, focused peace settled over her. It was the peace of being in motion, of having transcended the agonizing stasis. The fear of starting was gone, replaced by the simple, gratifying focus of doing. The Coastal Vigil had begun. The joy of imperfection. Hours later, the studio air was heavy with the smell of turpentine and oil. The canvas was a kaleidoscope of textures and colors, a living, breathing work in progress. Elara stepped back, wiping a streak of blue from her cheek, and looked at the painting, her heart light. The lighthouse was roughed in, a pale gray against the tumultuous sky. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. She realized that the joy and peace she felt weren't a reward for the quality of her work, but for the courage of her commitment. She reflected on the lessons the white canvas had taught her. The fear of the first mark is the greatest barrier. The resistance wasn't about the painting itself, it was about the starting. Once the first, ugly yellow mark was made, the critical voice quieted because the worst had already happened. The ideal had been sacrificed to the real. Perfection is the enemy of progress. Her obsession with matching the ideal image in her head was what kept her paralyzed. By choosing deliberate imperfection, the yellow streak, she lowered the stakes and gave herself permission to experiment and simply work. Peace is found in action, not anticipation. 6 weeks of anticipating the glorious finished piece had brought only anxiety. 6 hours of actually moving paint brought focus, flow, and deep satisfaction. The anxiety was a phantom of her mind. The joy was a tangible feeling in her hands. The Coastal Vigil, once a crippling expectation, was now just a friend waiting for her to come back tomorrow. Elara smiled, gathering her tools. The secret to starting, she knew now, wasn't about finding the perfect plan. It was about finding the simple, messy bravery to ruin the blank page.